What is up today, Dallas Mavericks fans and MFFLs? The Dallas Mavericks face off against the Oklahoma City Thunder, the first seed Oklahoma City Thunder, tonight at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. It is another game for the Dallas Mavericks to try to get themselves a little bit of momentum. Game one was not pretty, and I'm going to say mainly and mostly because when you're looking at what the Mavericks are going to need, we're going to need a consistent third scorer. And in my opinion, obviously, your number one and your number two are going to have to play much better. At this point, I'm going to say this very clearly. I don't feel like Luka Doncic is going to give us one of those prototypical playoff performances we've seen from Luka Doncic over the years. His knee is not looking as good as it is, and you can kind of tell the way that he lumbers after every given play. You have no idea when Luka Doncic is going to be that guy, but I'm going to say personally, I feel like this is going to be a very big offseason. And I'm not succeeding the playoff series or anything right now at all, but I'm talking about just in the offseason, in the long run. The Mavericks could be NBA champions, and I'm going to have the same opinion. The Dallas Mavericks are going to have to put a little bit of pressure on Luka Doncic, taking some time off and getting his body where it needs to be. We know how much he loves to play international ball. He loves to play for Slovenia. He loves to especially try to qualify and get those guys to the Olympics, and just bringing that country as much success as he can internationally. But Luka Doncic is going to have to ask himself, the NBA, how important is it to you? How important is it to you to win a championship? We do know at the end of the day, he's a prideful player. He has an ego. And again, that's what makes him as great as he is. But Luka Doncic is going to have to take the necessary steps to getting his body where it needs to be. And I'm going to say that starts with a lot of rest. But going into that, we're going to need another third scorer. We need a guy that can consistently get buckets when it's crunch time. And also, when we're talking about just crunch time, that doesn't necessarily even mean to me in the fourth quarter or late game situations. That means when you see the rest of the guys are not able to get the ball rolling, you're going to have to take some things to your hands into your own account. Obviously, look at what Luka Doncic did last game, 19 points. I believe this is the worst game, obviously, he's played in the postseason in his 5-year career. Kyrie Irving, 20 points. It wasn't a terrible game, but it wasn't anything that was going to make ESPN highlights or anything like that, not going to be all over social media. So we're going to need those guys to go off, because at the end of the day, the Dallas Mavericks, I feel like we are still lacking something. I felt personally we might have some advantages when it comes to just physicality, but when we're watching the playoff series, the game one a couple nights ago, the number one thing you kind of saw from the officiating is they're not going to let these guys be physical. They're not going to let them, and I'm going to say, even we're talking about what is considered a hard foul or even a light foul. They're not letting these guys get away with anything. And when you have a guy that will use that to his advantage, as a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the Mavericks are going to find themselves in trouble, because we are not going to be allowed to play the game that we kind of played against the Los Angeles Clippers. I was a big fan of that because I remember just growing up and watching NBA playoffs. The number one thing you always saw, and it was the narrative, and you always saw it actually always showed itself to be true. The NBA playoffs are a different monster. We're allowed to get away with a little bit more because they understand, the officials in general, but the NBA in general as a whole product understood. The playoffs are about physicality. The playoffs are about giving a little bit more than you did in the regular season, and that allows you to be able to play a little bit more physical. So the Dallas Mavericks are not going to be able to come out there with the same game plan that we had in game one, and I don't think it's a lot that needs to be scrapped, because one thing we saw, Kyrie Irving did handle the ball a little bit more, and I'm going to say sometimes that can be a little bit concerning, and I mean concerning in the fact of Kyrie Irving, obviously, he's a big factor in what the Dallas Mavericks offense is in the offensive scheme, and especially putting the ball in the bucket and playmaking himself. But you're not seeing Luka Doncic be able to show what he actually is. And I'm going to say, going into game two, this may be a situation where we're looking and saying Luka Doncic needs to be more of that prototypical point guard. I can still see him scoring 22 to 24 points, but I want to see those efficiently. I want to see those 3-point shots go way down. I don't want to see Luka Doncic jacking up 8 to 10 3-point shots a game, because his 3-point shot has not fallen. It doesn't look like he has his legs, and he's kind of aiming and forcing the ball a little bit. Obviously, when you're not having a guy like Maxi Kleber, who, again, we're not talking about he's even an elite role player in the NBA, but he's a very good player for the Dallas Mavericks. That's all that matters. What does he bring? What value does he bring to the team that he's on? And not having a guy like that can be able a little bit to have a little bit more of a low post defensive presence at certain points. I'm not saying he's a lockdown guy like that, but at certain points you see Maxi Kleber end up with big blocks and big rebounds. But a guy guy that can be, I guess you want to say, serviceable out there on the perimeter at certain points. I'm not having him guard your best offensive player on the perimeter or anything, but at certain points on any given possession, Maxi Kleber showed himself to be an efficient guy when it comes to just being able to help space the floor, first of all, on offense, but then talking about on defense, just having a little bit of versatility. We do not have that, and we're no longer going to have that, especially for the foreseeable future. It's up in the air that he potentially could return in the postseason if the Mavericks continue on, but this is going to be a major game, and the Mavericks are going to have to make some adjustments. Obviously, Jason Kidd, who I spoke about in the last video, post-game of Game 1, we're talking about Jason Kidd. He has now signed an extension, so he's going to be here for at least the next couple years. We already know that's always up in the air because you can sign an extension, you can sign a new contract in general, and the team can let you go in a year or two because if they feel like that the product is not what they thought it might be, then of course you're going to move on. But Jason Kidd is going to have to show that he has taken those major steps forward. Game 2, I want to see some adjustments. The number one thing I'm going to say is if we're going to allow the Oklahoma City Thunder to attack the basket, I want to see a little bit more maybe employed. And again, it can seem kind of simplified, but the same way when you see that big blowout win that the Dallas Mavericks had against the Oklahoma City Thunder I guess when Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington joined the team, I want to see us potentially find that guy that you think may be the weakest link from a perimeter shooting aspect and allow him to get as many shots as he can, because you cannot let Shai Gilgeous-Alexander get rolling. We know when he gets rolling, the Mavericks are going to have some problems because he's a guy that's going to attack the basket. He's going to use the officiating to his advantage, and you can't blame him for it because if the refs are going to give him the calls, why would you not use it? You'd be silly, completely silly, to not be using whatever advantage that you can find. I want to see us attack and just allow a certain guy. You have to kind of pinpoint who you feel the weakest link. And we're going to say a guy like Josh Giddey. That's a guy I do not have any issue with taking these deep and long range shots. And obviously because they do have, I'm going to say that I believe the Oklahoma City Thunder do have the best 3-point percentage in the league this year. So they have many capable guys. And I'm going to say now, no longer having a situation where we cannot have PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. getting to early foul trouble because we need them majorly out there for perimeter defense, especially we're talking about a lumbering and a guy that you want to say just has a I guess you want to say a disadvantage maybe somewhere right now in Luka Doncic. He's still playing defense as much as he can, but you can see he's not what we're used to, and especially even going to what we saw maybe going on earlier on in that Clippers series. I have no issue with Kyrie Irving taking a little bit more of the control, but if that's going to be what the case is, if Kyrie Irving is going to be more of that 1A, just take over that step, at least until we can see what Luka Doncic can actually give us, then we're going to have to fully lean into that. That's my biggest thing. If we're going to say, Kyrie, we need you to carry a little bit more of the playmaking, carry a little bit more of this, and Luka Doncic, obviously, he's still going to be a threat. You have to worry about him regardless, because at the end of the day, if a Luka Doncic does get hot on any given game, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble. But I want to see Luka Doncic just attack the basket a little bit more. I want to see him move around off picks a little bit more. And I'm talking about without the ball in his hands, because teams are now starting to sit on that fact. They don't think Luka Doncic is going to be able to carry an offense like he normally has, and this is going to be something the Mavericks are going to have to lean into. Like I said, get out and transition a little bit more, because one thing we saw, there were so many opportunities I felt in the past game 1, that the Mavericks just let slip away, whether it's coming to just finishing at the basket or just not taking advantage of momentum when you're actually able to maybe find yourself in a position to be able to take control of that game. So the Mavericks are not going to be able to come out there lollygagging around, taking your time, trying to slow pace yourself into momentum, because we can see Oklahoma City Thunder, like I said, they're a very young team. They don't have playoff experience much majorly at all. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, like I said, he was talking about a role player with the Los Angeles Clippers, and it wasn't even a major role player. He was a guy coming off the bench, finding his footing a little bit early on in his career, but now he's completely a completely different player. And then they have guys, like I said, surrounding them that are just great complementary pieces to that. And a Chet Holmgren, you're talking about a guy like Wiggins off the bench. You're looking at some of these other guys, a Jalen Williams. You're looking at Lou Dort. You're looking at Josh Giddey at certain points. So the Mavericks are going to have to come in here with a completely different game plan than they did have in game 1. And I'm going to say, if Jason Kidd is going to be the coach of the future, this is going to be the perfect opportunity for him to show it. As of right now, we're looking at a guy, I guess you want to say in the same situation, a Daniel Gafford. Last game, I believe 16 points, 11 rebounds in about 27 minutes. And I'm cool with the numbers. I believe 5 blocks. So let's be clear. He was also a great presence down low with rim protection. But we saw Derek Lively. We saw Daniel Gafford. They start to get in a little bit of foul trouble because, again, once they start rolling, and officials have shown they're going to implement themselves in this series, so there's nothing we can do about it. You're going to have to adjust and play to that. I guess you want to say play to that yourself. But Daniel Gafford, this is a guy that I feel like still can be a major piece in this playoff series against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But the number one issue I want to say is, we are not going to be able to just utilize him in the way that we kind of looking at. You saw in game 1. I felt at some points we kind of viewed him maybe as he's going to be a guy, just dump the ball down to him, because obviously we see Luka, like I said, Luka Doncic is not what he has been. And you're looking at Kyrie Irving. The number one knock I will give Kyrie Irving, and again, it's not anything crazy. It's not, because at some points I just feel like Kyrie Irving, he is that veteran presence, and he's that calming presence in the locker room and just on the team in general. But I want to see him be a little bit more aggressive early. I don't care if he and Luka Doncic need to have a conversation, if Jason Kidd, Luka Doncic, and Kyrie Irving, all three of them together need to have a conversation. But I want to see Kyrie Irving be more aggressive from the beginning of the game. Luka Doncic has the type of game that I don't have any issue with him just finding his spots here and there throughout a game. Luka Doncic can end up with 30 points and kind of find his flow at certain stretches and certain points of each quarter. But I want to see Kyrie Irving be able to maybe spearhead this offense a little bit more. Put the ball in his hands. Let him be that 1A guy. Let Luka Doncic play off of that. And if he's rolling, then we can kind of switch it up as the game goes on. But Luka Doncic has not been himself. So like I said, Kyrie Irving needs to be that veteran presence, needs to be that leader that he was brought here to be. So the Dallas Mavericks are not going to be able to just dump in the ball to Daniel Gafford and just say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to try to find easy baskets. Because at the end of the day, if I'm going to look at games and say, I need Daniel Gafford to score 30 plus points in games for us to win, we are going to find ourselves in trouble. PJ Washington, I need to see some of these guys just be more consistent from the outside shooting perspective. Obviously, there is only so much you're going to do when your skill set is what it is for this season. I'm sure a lot of these guys are going to be in the lab, in the gym, trying to figure out what they can add to their games. But right now, the Dallas Mavericks are a little bit at a disadvantage when it talks about just having a well-rounded unit around that can potentially just put the ball in the basket. With the defense, I don't feel like the defense is going to be an issue, because once you adjust, once you figure out, okay, this is how the officials are calling games, you're going to be able to kind of figure out your own footing on that side of the ball. But offensively, if we're going to have these half-court sets, these half-court issues, the Mavericks are going to have to figure out a way to just run through that wall, because this is not something you can find yourself in a hole. And potentially, I'm going to say, let's start here, obviously. It can be as simple as this. You're playing on the road. Oklahoma City Thunder, this is the number one team in the Western Conference, a very tough Western Conference this season. So let's start there. This is obviously going to be a team that has the potential to be able to get on these hot runs. Again, a young team that at some point, like I said, sometimes that non-experience or inexperience can cause you some issues. But sometimes when you're talking about a young team with lots of talent around, sometimes they're just playing balls to the wall, and they have no issue with just continuing to attack, because they don't know any better anyway. So they're just playing off momentum and playing off rhythm, as they were doing throughout this entire regular season. So this is going to be interesting to see what the Mavericks are going to do in game 2. I believe the Oklahoma City Thunder open up as a 5.5 point favorite. This is, again, it's a road game. It's not the end of the world if you go down 2-0, because, again, like I said, most times than not, especially in the playoffs, and especially as the series and the rounds go up another notch, you're talking about teams usually are going to be better home teams, usually going to play better at home. Role players a lot of times play better at home. So if the Mavericks can come in here and try to steal one on the road, they can put themselves in a great position. But if you go down 2-0, it's 0-2, excuse me, I would say it's not the end of the world, but I know it's a position the Mavericks are not wanting to find themselves in due to, again, now we're starting to lose some bodies. Tim Hardaway Jr. came back last game and did not give us anything at all from an outside shooting perspective. And sometimes we're back to the Tim Hardaway Jr. taking just bad shots. Again, I still feel like this is always a guy that can be a microwave scorer. He can be hot. But again, there are too many times that we can kind of look back and say, but we're not getting that. It doesn't matter that he has the potential to be. He's not giving us that. And I don't want to see Jason Kidd continue to rely on a guy that's not going to contribute and help us, because obviously we know he's not the best defender. So if that shot is not falling, Tim Hardaway Jr. is definitely going to be a negative on the court. So we're going to have to get out rolling early. So I need a Kyrie Irving aggressive masterclass. This is the game where we say, who are the real playoff performers? If Luka Doncic is able to kind of just find his footing in any, I guess you want to say, in any ebbs and flow of this game, this is going to be the game that we're going to need it. Like I said, the role players surrounding PJ Washington, Derrick Jones Jr., Josh Green off the bench, who did bring some energy in game one. I will definitely give him that. Derek Lively. We have got to keep him out of foul trouble, and we're going to have to attack some of these big men. I'm talking about, look at a Chet Holmgren. We're going to have to attack. We cannot allow him to just be a presence for them, because what that allows them to do is continue to just kind of play their half-court offense. And we know Chet Holmgren at certain points, you can find just stretches of the game, he's making momentum plays. We're talking about just catching lobs, which you saw him do a few times, having some solid blocks in game one. So excuse me, this is going to be major for the Mavericks, again, to try to come in here and steal a little momentum back. I'm hoping they can do just that, and as I know the rest of you are as well. I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. You guys are amazing. We'll see if the Mavericks are able to make some noise tonight, but as always, go Mavs, and enjoy the rest of your day.